One man held the country together while 600,000 Americans killed each other. Another inherited a nation on the edge of total economic collapse, breadlines stretching for miles, banks collapsing like dominoes, and somehow turned it into a superpower. And one guy? He got shot in the chest mid-speech and kept talking for another 90 minutes. These are the 12 most loved presidents in American history. After winning the Revolutionary War, he was the most powerful man on the continent. The army loved him. The people loved him. He could have seized power and nobody would have stopped him, but he didn't. He walked away. Twice. First from the military, then from the presidency after 2 terms, when there was no law saying he had to. King George III of England reportedly said that if Washington voluntarily gave up power, he would be the greatest man in the world. And here's the thing most people don't realize. Washington wasn't some universally beloved figure during his presidency. He was attacked in newspapers, accused of acting like a monarch. His own cabinet was tearing itself apart. Jefferson and Hamilton were at each other's throats, and Washington was stuck in the middle. But what made Washington immortal wasn't what he did in office. It was what he chose not to do. He set the precedent that power in America is temporary. That one person doesn't get to hold it forever. Every peaceful transfer of power since then, every single one, traces back to that decision. That's why he's not just on Mount Rushmore. He's carved into the DNA of the country itself. Now, if Washington built the stage, Jefferson wrote the script. And he did it with one of the most famous sentences ever put on paper. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. But Jefferson is also one of the most contradictory figures in American history. The man who wrote those words owned over 600 enslaved people. He spoke about liberty while denying it to others under his own roof. Modern historians wrestle with this constantly, and his ranking has actually dropped in some recent surveys because of it. So why is he still on the list? Because the Louisiana Purchase literally doubled the size of the United States overnight. For about 3 cents an acre. That's not a typo. He bought 828,000 square miles of land from Napoleon for $15 million. Think about it like this. You could buy the entire western half of America today for what some people pay for a house in Manhattan. That deal shaped the geography of the nation forever. And the words he wrote, however imperfectly he lived them, became the blueprint that future generations used to expand freedom to everyone. The civil rights movement literally starving. That's what FDR walked into in 1933. Most presidents get 4 years, some get 8. FDR got 16, the only president ever elected 4 times. And he used that time to fundamentally reshape what the American government does. Social Security? FDR. The SEC that regulates Wall Street? FDR. The FDIC that ensures your bank deposits so you don't lose everything if your bank collapses? FDR. But he was no saint. He tried to pack the Supreme Court when they kept striking down his programs. He ordered the internment of over 120,000 Japanese Americans during World War II, ripping families from their homes and putting them in camps. It's one of the worst civil liberties violations in American history. And yet, he led America through 2 of its greatest crises back-to-back, the Great Depression and World War II. He rallied a broken nation with fireside chats on the radio, just talking to people, calmly, directly, telling them it was going to be okay. And somehow they believed him. He did all of this from a wheelchair, paralyzed from the waist down by polio. Most Americans at the time didn't even know. The press never photographed it. Think about that. The most powerful leader in the free world commanding a global war effort, and he couldn't walk across a room. So here's a question for you. What happens when the most powerful president in modern history suddenly dies, and his replacement is a guy nobody takes seriously? That's Harry Truman. When FDR died in April 1945, Truman had been vice president for only 82 days. He didn't even know about the atomic bomb until after he became president. Imagine finding out your country has a weapon that can destroy entire cities, and now you have to decide whether to use it. He used it. Twice. Hiroshima and Nagasaki remain the only nuclear attacks in human history. The debate over whether it was justified has never stopped, and it probably never will. He also fired General Douglas MacArthur, one of the most popular military figures in America, during the Korean War. Yellowstone, Yosemite, the Grand Canyon. He preserved 230 million acres of public land, an area bigger than Texas and California combined. Without Teddy Roosevelt, some of America's most iconic landscapes would be strip malls right now. And the Panama Canal? He made that happen too. Connected the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans and reshaped global trade forever. The man was a force of nature who literally reshaped the natural world. Now, if Teddy Roosevelt was a bull moose, JFK was a rock star, the first president for the television age. Young, handsome, charming, he understood something none of his predecessors did. Image matters. His 1960 debate against Nixon is legendary, not for what was said, but for how they looked. People who listened on radio thought Nixon won. People who watched on TV thought Kennedy won. That debate changed politics forever. But here's what most people forget. Kennedy's actual legislative record was thin. He struggled to get major bills through Congress. The Civil Rights Act he championed didn't pass until after his death. The Bay of Pigs invasion was a disaster, and the Cuban Missile Crisis brought the world closer to nuclear annihilation than any other moment in history. So why is he ranked as one of the most popular presidents in public polls? One word: Camelot. Kennedy inspired an entire generation. He launched the space race. He created the Peace Corps. He made Americans believe that their country could do impossible things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. And then Dallas, November 22nd, 1963. He was 46 years old. Like Lincoln, his assassination froze him in time. The promise of what could have been became more powerful than any policy he could have passed. JFK is proof that in the eyes of the public, inspiration sometimes matters more than legislation. Now, not every beloved president was a firebrand or a martyr. Some of them earned their place on this list by doing something that sounds boring, but is actually incredibly difficult. They kept things calm. Before he was president, Eisenhower commanded the entire Allied invasion of Europe on D-Day. He sent 156,000 troops across the English Channel, the largest seaborne invasion in human history. He carried a resignation letter in his pocket. That almost never happens. All right, we're in the final stretch. And these last three presidents share something fascinating in common. Their greatest accomplishments are things people take for granted today. And their biggest controversies are things that still divide the country. LBJ is the most underappreciated president on this list. And that's because his legacy is split clean down the middle. On one side, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. These are arguably the most important pieces of legislation in the 20th century. Johnson, a white Texan who grew up in the segregated South, pushed these through Congress using every political trick, threat, and favor he had. He reportedly told an aide that by signing the Civil Rights Act, the Democratic Party had lost the South for a generation. He was right. He signed it anyway. Medicare, Medicaid, Head Start, the Great Society programs. Johnson did more for domestic policy than almost any president in history. And then there's Vietnam. Johnson escalated the war from 16,000 advisors to over 500,000 combat troops. Over 58,000 Americans died. Millions of Vietnamese died. His own party turned against him. Protesters chanted, "Hey, hey, LBJ, how many kids did you kill today?" outside the White House. He chose not to run for re-election, one of the most powerful men in the world, broken by a war he couldn't win. Scholars rank him high because the Civil Rights Act and Medicare alone would make any presidency historic. He changed the fabric of American society forever. But the public polls leave him out, because Vietnam is the wound that never fully healed. LBJ is the president who proves that you can be both a hero and a tragedy at the same time. In 2004, a virtually unknown state senator from Illinois gave a speech at the Democratic National Convention. 4 years later, he was president of the United States. That kind of rise doesn't happen in American politics, until it did. Obama's election in 2008 was a cultural earthquake. The first black president in a country that was built, in part, on slavery. The symbolism alone was staggering. But beyond the symbolism, he inherited an economy in freefall, the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. The Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, which guaranteed black men the right to vote. For decades, the lost cause narrative, a deliberate effort to romanticize the Confederacy, trashed Grant's reputation. They called him a butcher, a drunk, a failure. But 21st century historians peeled back that propaganda and found a president who fought harder for racial justice than almost anyone between Lincoln and LBJ. Grant's rehabilitation is one of the greatest reputation turnarounds in presidential history. And it's still happening. His public favorability in 2026 polling sits at 60%, higher than many presidents who served far more recently. So here's what 12 presidents, 250 years of history, and mountains of polling data tell us. Americans don't love presidents who play it safe. They don't love presidents who avoid controversy. They love presidents who do something, even if it costs them everything. Washington gave up power. Lincoln gave his life. FDR gave his health. Truman gave up his popularity. LBJ gave up his political career. Every single one of them sacrificed something enormous. And that's the thread that connects all 12 names. Because here's the uncomfortable truth about presidential greatness. You almost never get to be loved and comfortable. The presidents who risked nothing? You've already forgotten their names. But these 12? They're carved in stone, printed on money, taught in every classroom, and debated in videos like this one. The question is, will any future president ever join them? I guess we'll find out. If this video taught you something new about a president you thought you already knew, drop a comment telling me which one surprised you the most. Subscribe if you want more deep dives into the people and moments that shaped history. And I'll see you in the next one.